Alex, I spent 3 hours yesterday playing a high stakes game of Tetris with a 300-pound cast iron bandsaw and a shop floor that's about as level as a stormy sea.
Let me guess. You tried to move the big Laguna without unlocking the backcaster again?
Worse, I convinced myself that if I just scooted the joiner 6 inches to the left, I'd finally have enough outfeed room for that walnut tabletop. Fast forward to me pinned between a stack of plywood and a machine that refuses to budge, reconsidering every life choice that led me to woodworking.
I'd have paid for a ticket to see that. But it's the eternal struggle, right? We all start with this grand vision of a pristine, professional layout, and 6 months later, you're climbing over a table saw just to reach your clamps.
Exactly, we're diving deep into that today. Mobile bases, flexible layouts, and why your shop should feel less like a storage unit and more like a river. If the flow's blocked, the work just gets muddy.
Okay, let's start with that river idea. People always talk about workflow, but for someone just setting up their first garage space, that feels like a corporate buzzword. What does it actually look like when you aren't fighting your furniture?
It's about the journey of the board. I used to keep my lumber rack in the back corner because, hey, it's out of the way. But then I realized I was dragging 8-foot slabs of white oak across the entire shop, dodging the drill press and the cat just to get to the miter saw.
Which is basically a workout you didn't sign up for.
It's a recipe for a bad back and a dinged up workpiece. Now, I tell folks to think about the milling triad. You want your joiner, your planer, and your table saw to be in a tight little neighborhood. You're going to be bouncing between those three like a pinball when you're prepping stock. If they're on opposite sides of the room, you're just burning daylight walking.
So lumber comes in the door, goes to the rack nearby, then hits the miter saw for a rough cut. That makes sense. But what about the center of the room? Everyone wants that big, beautiful assembly table, but it takes up so much real estate.
The assembly table is the town square of your shop. Everything happens there. But here's the mistake I see all the time. People push their table saw against the wall to save space. Unless you only ever plan on making birdhouses, that's a trap. A table saw needs air around it. It needs room to breathe, especially on the outfeed side.
I've seen your shop, Tiger. Your outfeed table doubles as a junk drawer. Don't think I haven't noticed the half-empty glue bottles and coffee mugs living there.
Listen, that's weighted stabilization. But you're right, if your outfeed table is also your assembly table, you have to keep it clear. That's why I'm a huge advocate for keeping your clamps right there. If you have to trek across the shop to get a parallel clamp while your glue is literally skinning over, you're going to have a bad time.
Let's talk about the magic of wheels. I feel like the mobile shop is the only way to survive in a one-car garage. But some of these mobile bases feel like they're made of wet noodles.
Oh man, I've bought the cheap ones before, the kind where the wheels are made of some mystery plastic that develops a flat spot if it sits for 2 days. You go to move your saw, and it's like trying to push a shopping cart with a locked wheel through a gravel pit.
So what's the move? Do we put everything on wheels, even the workbench?
Not the workbench. Never the workbench.
Why not? Flexibility is king, right?
A workbench needs to be an anchor. If you're hand planing a board and your bench is doing the cha-cha across the floor because a locking caster gave way, you're going to lose your mind. You want that thing heavy and static. But everything else, the bandsaw, the sander, the planer, put them on casters. But, and this is the big one, get the ones that lift the machine up and then drop it back onto its own feet.
The ones with the foot pedals?
Yeah, when you're actually cutting, you want the machine's weight on the floor, not on 4 tiny points of contact. It's the difference between a rock-solid cut and a vibration fest that leaves ripples in your wood.
I saw a layout once where the guy had his miter saw built into a long counter that doubled as his scrap storage and his lumber rack. It looked incredible, but it took up one entire wall. Is that a pro move or just a space hog?
It's a commitment. It's like getting a tattoo of your high school sweetheart. If it works, it's great. But if your needs change, you're in for some painful surgery. I prefer what I call zonal flexibility.
Break that down for me.
Instead of one massive built-in, think in blocks. A miter station that's maybe 6 feet long, but it's the same height as your table saw and your assembly bench. That way, if you have a 16-foot crown molding to cut, your other surfaces act as support. You aren't building a monument, you're building a modular system.
It's about the heights then. If everything is 34 inches off the floor, the whole shop is one giant outfeed table.
Now you're cooking with gas. I remember once I built a router table that was exactly a 1/4 inch taller than my table saw. I didn't think it mattered. Then I tried to rip a wide sheet of plywood, and the edge caught on the router table, kicked the board back, and nearly sent me through the garage door.
That sounds like one of those lessons that leaves a bruise.
It left a dent in the wall and a permanent respect for the tape measure. In a small shop, matching heights isn't just a neat trick, it's a safety feature.
One thing I noticed in some of the tips we were looking at was the mention of light, putting the bench near a window. In my shop, the window is behind the rack where I keep all my junk. Am I missing out?
You're missing the soul of the work, Alex. There is something about natural light hitting a piece of wood that shows you flaws you'll never see under a fluorescent bulb. You think a surface is smooth, then the sun hits it at an angle and bam, sanding marks everywhere.
So it's not just for the aesthetic Instagram photos?
Well, it helps with those too. But seriously, finishing is where it matters most. If you're applying a wipe-on poly in a dark corner, you're going to have sags and runs that you won't notice until you bring the piece into the living room. Put your assembly and finishing area near the best light you've got. Your eyes will thank you, and your projects will actually look like they were made by a human and not a subterranean troll.
Speaking of finishing, what about the dust? If I've got my milling triad next to my finishing zone, isn't that a recipe for a fuzzy varnish?
That's the friction of a small shop. You have to be a bit of a clean freak. But a flexible layout helps here too. If your tools are mobile, you can push the dusty stuff toward the garage door and keep the assembly area clear. I actually have a curtain, just a heavy-duty plastic sheet, that I pull across when I'm doing the final coats. It's not a clean room, but it keeps the sawdust from the table saw from migrating onto my fresh finish.
Let's talk about the clutter creep. You start with a clear floor, and then you get a new sander, a new jig, a bucket of offcuts. Suddenly, you're shuffling things around for 20 minutes just to make one cut. How do you stop the shop from becoming a storage unit for things you might use?
It's the small tweaks philosophy. Every few months, I stand in the middle of the shop with a cup of coffee, no tools in hand, and I just watch myself in my head. I look at where I'm tripping. I had this one cord reel that I'd step over maybe 50 times a day. I just got used to it. One day I spent 10 minutes mounting it to the ceiling.
10 minutes to fix a problem you had for years?
Exactly. We woodworkers are weirdly comfortable with inconvenience. We'll spend 40 hours carving a dovetail, but won't spend 20 minutes organizing our drill bits. A flexible shop means you have the permission to change things. If you find yourself constantly moving a trash can to get to your joiner, move the trash can permanently. It sounds simple, but it's the difference between a shop that feels like a sanctuary and one that feels like a chore.
I think a lot of people are afraid to commit. They don't want to bolt anything down or build a permanent station because what if I get a bigger lathe?
That's why I love the French cleat system. It's the ultimate, I have commitment issues, storage solution. Everything hangs on a wall slat. If I decide my chisels should be 6 inches to the right, I just move the rack. No holes in the drywall, no regrets.
All right, Tiger, wrap it up for us. If someone is standing in their messy garage right now, feeling overwhelmed by the piles of wood and the machines that weigh as much as a small car, where do they start?
Don't try to fix the whole shop in a weekend. You'll just end up with a bigger mess and a sore back. Start with the path of the board. Map out how you get a piece of wood from the truck to the workbench. If there's a bottleneck, a tight squeeze, or a long walk, fix just that one thing.
And the wheels?
Get the good ones. Seriously. Your future self, the one who doesn't have a hernia from trying to shimmy a drum sander, will thank you. A shop should be a tool in itself, Alex. It shouldn't be the obstacle you have to overcome to get to the work.
Well, I'm going home to put casters on my coffee table so I can at least pretend my living room is a functional workspace.
Just make sure they lock or your morning brew is going for a ride. Thanks for joining us in the Tiger Den. Go move one thing in your shop today that's been bothering you. Just one thing. You'll be surprised how much lighter the air feels.
See you next time.